an ancient, abandoned house, known in the village folklore as cursed. No one has ever been able to live there for long. Some families tried, some people attempted to settle, but in the end, they all fled with terrifying experiences. Michael's family, who had moved from the city, did not believe in such superstitions. They arrived at this old mansion to start a new chapter in their lives. The house was huge, with wooden stairs, a spacious porch, and a vast empty yard, mysterious yet fascinating. The villagers warned them, "This house is not safe. At night, no one sees anything, but they feel something." But Michael laughed it off. His wife, Emily, and their son, Jacob, were excited about their new home, but an unknown terror was waiting for them in the near future. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. Michael and his family were busy adjusting to their new home, but soon, strange things started happening. One night, Jacob suddenly woke up screaming in fear. His body was cold, his eyes wide open. Michael and Emily rushed to his room. Emily pulled him close. "What happened, sweetheart?" Jacob, trembling, whispered, "I saw someone outside the window. A dark shadow. It was watching me." Michael looked outside but saw nothing. He dismissed it as a child's nightmare, but Emily felt uneasy. From that night, unusual occurrences became frequent. The doors would suddenly open and close by themselves. Heavy footsteps echoed on the floor at midnight, yet everyone in the house was asleep. One morning, Emily went to the kitchen and found all the utensils scattered on the floor. The refrigerator door was half open, and the food was in disarray as if someone had rummaged through it in the dead of night. Michael still believed it was just a coincidence, but Emily felt that something was truly wrong. Jacob, once a cheerful boy, became quiet and withdrawn, afraid to sleep alone. One afternoon, Emily saw him sitting on the porch, talking to someone, though no one else was there. "Jacob, who are you talking to?" Emily asked. Jacob slowly turned to her. His face was pale, and his deep gaze sent shivers down Emily's spine. "He said he has been here for a long time." "Who? Who said that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "He doesn't remember his name. He just knows he was here and he will always be here." Michael continued dismissing the events as coincidences, but Emily knew that an unseen presence was growing stronger around them. As the days passed, the strange occurrences became more intense. It was no longer just sounds or moving objects. There was something in the house watching them, lurking in the shadows. Emily started noticing that whenever she looked into the mirrors in the house, something felt off. At times, she could swear she saw a movement behind her reflection, a figure standing just beyond the frame. But when she turned around, there was nothing. One evening, Michael invited some colleagues over for dinner. Strangely, during their visit, everything seemed normal. The house was silent, and nothing unusual happened. It was as if the presence in the house knew how to hide when guests were around. However, the moment they left, the eerie feeling returned. Doors creaked open, whispering sounds echoed through the hallways, and Jacob's behavior became even more unusual. He no longer played with his toys. Instead, he sat in the corner of his room, staring at the wall as if waiting for something or someone. One night, Emily woke up to a soft murmuring sound. At first, she thought it was Michael talking in his sleep. But when she turned, she saw Michael sleeping peacefully beside her. The voice, however, persisted. It was coming from Jacob's room. With her heart pounding, she slowly walked to Jacob's room and gently pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through the curtains. And then she saw it. Jacob was sitting upright on his bed, whispering to someone invisible in the darkness. "Jacob?" Emily called out, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob turned to her, his eyes strangely dull, as if he was in some sort of trance. "He's here, Mom," he said flatly. "He says he likes us." Emily felt her blood run cold. "Who is he, Jacob?" she asked, her voice shaking. Jacob simply smiled, his expression eerily empty. "He doesn't have a name, but he's been waiting for us for a long time." That night, Emily knew they were not alone in this house, and whatever was lurking in the shadows, it had no intention of letting them leave. Terrified by what was happening, Emily sought answers. She visited the village elder, an old man named Mr. Thompson, who had lived in the area for over 70 years. When she mentioned their house, his face darkened. That house, it belonged to a man named Richard Halloway. He was a cruel landowner who lived there over 100 years ago. Many servants worked for him, but none ever left. People say he performed dark rituals, and his victims never escaped. Emily's stomach twisted in fear. "What happened to him?" she asked. Mr. Thompson sighed. One night, his own servants turned against him. They set fire to the house, trapping him inside. But before he died, he swore that no one would ever take his home. Some say his spirit still lingers, taking possession of anyone who dares to stay too long. Emily rushed home, her mind racing. When she entered the house, she saw Jacob standing at the top of the staircase, staring down at her with empty eyes. "Mom," he said in a hollow voice. "He says we belong to him now." A gust of cold air rushed through the house, and the lights flickered violently. The whispers grew louder, as if the walls themselves were speaking. Michael ran to Jacob, shaking him. "Jacob! Wake up!" For a brief moment, Jacob's expression wavered. His lips trembled as if he was fighting something inside him. "Daddy, help me," he whimpered before his eyes rolled back and his body went limp. Emily screamed as the house seemed to close in around them. The shadows grew darker, stretching toward them like claws. They had to escape. The house seemed to come alive, its walls closing in on Michael and Emily. The whispers echoed through every room, and shadows twisted into shapes that no one could understand. Jacob lay motionless in his father's arms, his eyes still vacant, as though he were no longer entirely himself. "We have to get out of here, now!" Emily shouted, her voice breaking as she clutched Michael's arm. But the house wasn't going to let them go so easily. The doors, which had once seemed so welcoming, now refused to open. Michael pulled and tugged at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the whispering grew louder, like a cacophony of voices, some pleading, some demanding. "Michael, please!" Emily cried. "We have to leave. It's too strong. It's taking Jacob." The lights flickered one last time, casting the house into a darkness deeper than night itself. In the eerie quiet that followed, they heard it, a voice, low and guttural, coming from the very walls of the house. "Your son is mine." It was Richard Halloway's voice, the man whose spirit still haunted the mansion, determined to claim the souls of anyone who dared stay. Emily's heart raced, but she didn't give up. She grabbed the nearest object, an old lamp, and smashed it against the door. Michael joined her, and together they battered the door, but it was useless. In desperation, Emily looked around. Her eyes locked on the staircase where Jacob had once stood, empty and lifeless. The shadows seemed to stretch out from that very spot. "Michael, we need to find the source," Emily whispered. "The curse is tied to this house, but there's something, somewhere, holding it together. We need to destroy it." Michael looked at her, his face pale, but he nodded. "Let's find it. For Jacob." They sprinted through the dark house, dodging the twisted shadows that seemed to reach for them at every turn. They finally reached the basement door, which creaked ominously as they opened it. The air smelled of decay and rot, and the room was dimly lit by an old furnace, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. At the far corner of the basement stood an altar, a place that seemed to pulse with dark energy. The walls around it were inscribed with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dark. Emily's heart pounded as she realized that this altar was the center of the evil that had taken hold of their home. "This is it," Michael said, his voice trembling. "This is where it all began." Emily glanced around, finding an old, rusted dagger on the floor. It looked like it had been discarded. She didn't hesitate. She picked it up, feeling its weight in her hand. Michael stood by her side, holding Jacob protectively, and together they approached the altar. "Get ready," Emily said, as she raised the dagger high. Without another word, she plunged it into the heart of the altar, the blade sinking deep into the stone. A loud, ear-piercing scream filled the room as the shadows seemed to writhe in agony, and the entire house trembled violently. The temperature plummeted, and the whispers turned into frantic screams, all demanding their souls in unison. But Emily and Michael stood firm, determined to break the curse once and for all. Suddenly, a burst of light erupted from the altar. The house shook violently as the spirits trapped within it fought to escape. A dark shadow, Halloway's twisted form, began to materialize before them, reaching out with long, gnarled fingers. But it was too late. The curse had been broken. The dagger, now glowing with an otherworldly light, severed the connection between the house and the spirits that had haunted it for centuries. The shadow screamed one last time before dissolving into nothingness. The house grew eerily quiet. The air cleared, and the oppressive darkness lifted. The cold chill vanished, leaving behind a heavy silence. Emily collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. Michael ran to her, holding her tightly as they looked down at Jacob, whose eyes began to flutter open. "Mom, Dad," Jacob's voice was soft, but his gaze was clear, no longer empty, no longer lost. They had done it. They had broken the curse. The following morning, the house was no longer the same. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight that had haunted them was gone. The villagers, who had once warned them about the house, now looked on in disbelief as Michael and Emily walked out of the mansion, their son safely in their arms. As they left, they looked back at the house one last time. It stood silent and still, no longer a place of fear, but a symbol of their strength and survival. They never spoke of it again. But every year, on the anniversary of that night, they would take a moment to reflect on the terror they had faced, and the terror they had survived. And somewhere, in the quiet of that old house, Richard Halloway's spirit lay at rest, forever silenced by the family who had dared to defy him. That concludes the hidden fear behind the house. I hope you enjoyed the journey. Let me know if you'd like any changes or if you'd like to explore more ideas for your stories.